Today we're showing you what might be the final piece of a truly sustainable home. In previous episodes we showed how we built the structure of the house, insulated the roof and walls, and finished the whole exterior. But there is one part of the home that is often overlooked, and without it, no matter how well you build, your house will never really be sustainable. Over the past few decades, homes have become more and more airtight. Better insulation and double glazing, sealed roofs, all great for energy efficiency. But the result is that many modern homes can no longer breathe properly. Studies reveal that most houses have air that is 2 to 5 times more polluted than the air outside. And at the same time, nearly 50% of the energy used for heating and cooling is lost through ventilation, or the lack of it. That means that we are wasting energy just to replace the stale air that we cannot live with. And while insulation and air tightness help save heat, they also trap humidity, odors, and CO2, creating spaces that are energy efficient but not necessarily healthy. In our case, we wanted a house that could breathe on its own, one that stays efficient, comfortable, and healthy all year round, even off-grid. So we install a system that recovers the energy from the air we expel and uses it to precondition the fresh air coming in. A small change that completely transforms how the house feels and how sustainable it really is.
¿Qué estás haciendo?
Intenta matarla. Tú lo guías, ¿vale? ¿Tú lo enganchas?
Yo no veo nada. Creo que se ha enganchado.
¿Seguro?
Sí.
Asómate, ¿no ves? With the main machine already installed on the wall, we were ready to start. To bring fresh air in and exhaust stale air out, we needed to run a large duct through the wall for the intake air. That meant cutting a huge 195mm opening straight through the facade and through the insulation and all the inner layers of the wall. It sounds simple enough, but it turned out to be one of those jobs that looks easy on paper and tests your patience in practice. The drill kept overheating, and at one point it just stopped altogether. So it became a slow process. Drill a bit, let it cool, clear the dust, and go again. Little by little, the hole started to open up through each layer, until I could finally see the daylight from the other side. It was a very strange moment, cutting a hole that big in a perfectly sealed wall that we worked so hard to have, but it's also necessary, because this is how the house will breathe. I decided to locate this intake hole cover here in the passage because it's an area that will be shaded during the summer, and it will be where I could feed the coolest air during the summer. Once the main openings were ready, it was time to install the distribution boxes. These are basically the lungs of the system. One brings in fresh air from the ERV, and the other collects the stale air from each room to send it back out. Each box has multiple outlets that connect to small flexible ducts. One network distributes clean, preconditioned air to the living areas and bedrooms, while the other extracts from places like kitchen and the bathroom, where humidity and odors build up. Positioning them took a bit of planning. They needed to be accessible, close enough to the ERV unit to keep ducts run short, but also far enough from the other equipment to avoid noise or vibration. I fixed the boxes firmly in place and using a rubber washer to avoid vibrations. It's one of those steps that doesn't look impressive on camera, but it's what makes the system work quietly and efficiently in the background. Every room will get its own balanced airflow. Not too much, not too little, all managed by these two simple boxes. With the distribution boxes in place, the next step was to decide where each vent will actually go. Eugenia and I went around the house marking the final positions, one for the supply air and one for the exhaust. Some spaces like the living room are larger and need two fittings to distribute air more evenly. Each vent connects through a T-fitting that allows two ducts to run horizontally and then drop air vertically into the space. The same setup works for both supply and extraction, keeping the system balanced across the house. This stage is less about tools and more about how the house will feel once it's finished, how the air moves, how discreet the vents are, and how they align with the ceiling and lighting. And I have to say that even though I'm the architect, Eugenia's input makes a huge difference here. I often get the praise for how the house is turning out, the proportions, the materials, the layout. But what most people don't see is how much I rely on her taste. Sometimes we show it on camera, like today, but many times it happens quietly, off camera. For final aesthetic decisions, like this one, I trust her judgment completely, and honestly, it has always been the right call. Walking through the house together like this was also one of those moments when it started to feel real. We have put so much time and work into this build, and most of it so far has been invisible. Layers of insulation, wiring, schematics, plumbing, but days like today, when you can finally start to imagine how each space will feel, are the moments when it begins to feel less like a project and more like our home. Once we had marked all the final vent positions, it was time to secure the T-fittings to the ceiling. And unlike furniture from IKEA, these don't come with an instruction manual. Every ceiling is different and there is no standard way to mount them, so I had to come up with a few creative solutions. Luckily, I keep a small stock of leftover metal studs and tracks from previous builds. They have come in handy more times than I can count, and this was one of those times. Using those pieces, I built small substructures inside the ceiling cavities to hold each T firmly in place and perfectly aligned with the future vent openings. Once the bracket was in, I could finally secure the fitting and double check that all the ducts will connect cleanly later on. It's a slow process, but one of those steps that makes everything else easier down the line. All the pipes will stay completely hidden inside the structure. When we designed the roof with Blocken, I made sure to leave plenty of space inside the roof trusses precisely for this reason, so we could hide all the installation inside the ceiling without ever needing to lower it. That means we will end up with a high ceiling throughout the entire house, but more importantly, a constant ceiling height from one end to the other. Clean, simple lines on the outside and all the complexity hidden inside the structure where it belongs. The last T I had to install was in the corridor, right under the big skylight. I know many of you have mentioned that the skylight could be a problem, And honestly, without a solution, it would be. But this was something that I had already thought about while designing the house. To me, the skylight is one of those elements that really define the design. It completely transforms the space, it brings natural light in, makes the corridor feel open, and connects the interior with the sky in a way that artificial light never could. But the problem, of course, is that it will heat the air. But the hot air goes up, not down, so that area right below the glass will naturally become a pocket of heat. To fix that, I decided to add an exhaust vent right at the top, just below the glass. That vent will pull the hot air out, but here is the good part. During winter, since we are using a heat exchanger, that warm air will heat the new cold air coming in. So in a way, we are heating the incoming air for free. And in the summer, we can do the opposite, extract all that hot air and just bring in fresh, cooler air instead. This is a simple, out-of-the-box idea that turns what could have been a problem into an advantage. Lately I have been spending very long days inside the new house, and since there is still no electricity, this thing has literally saved me. The Bluetti Apex 300. I honestly didn't expect it to handle as much as it does. One day I plugged my demolition hammer to dig a big trench and it went through it without even blinking. Then I tried the big concrete mixer that I have to mix concrete, to use it to make the slopes of the inspection boxes of the water system. And the same thing, the battery was smooth and stable. Inside I put it on wheels, so I can move it around while using the vacuum and all my tools. And it has become part of my daily workflow now. That's when I realized how powerful it actually is. You know, you see 7,680 watts of lifting power. You can feel the difference compared to the smaller stations, and it's built to grow with you, so you can easily add battery packs up to 19 kilowatts hour, or even link 3 Apex 300 units for a total of 58 kilowatts hour and an output of 11.5 kilowatts hour. That's enough to run this off-grid house, you know, completely, and uses automotive grade live PO batteries rated for 17 years and over 6,000 cycles. So this is not a temporary backup, it's actually a long-term system. What I like is how plug and play it is. You just need to turn it on and plug in your tools and it works, you know. And I also got the Hub D1 power hub, which connects to the main unit and lets me run all my DC gear. I use it to power my smaller DC tools and lights when I'm working late, and for charging it's super flexible. With solar I can hit 2,400 watts and get to 80% in just 40 minutes, and if I combine AC and solar it reaches 3,450 watts, so a full charge takes about an hour. And you know, on cloudy days like today, I just use my backup generator and it still charges very fast, around 70 minutes. Everything can be monitored through the Bluetti app. I have been using it to check the battery levels and even to turn it on remotely before getting to the site. As you can see, the machine is off, and if I come here and press this button, turns on automatically from the phone. You also get real-time weather alerts, so you can prepare beforehand for the bad weather. And at this point I'm using the Apex 300 as more than a backup. It's my main power source until the solar system of the house is finished, and it's handling everything that I throw at it. If you are looking for a serious portable power station for a house, your workshop, van life, this is actually a very good option. I will leave the link and discount codes in the description. Now it was time to start installing the ducts. We bought massive 50-meter rollers. Each duct is 90 millimeters in diameter, which is quite large for this type of system. but keeping the section big reduces the air speed, and that means less noise. I want the house to be as silent as possible. I don't want to hear any humming, no air rushing through the ceiling, nothing, just silence. But going for bigger ducts made our lives much harder. They are much stiffer, more difficult to handle, and not easy to fit through tight spaces. But for me, the trade-off is worth it. Some teas only have one duct connected, and others have two, depending on the size of the space and the volume of the air that we wanted to extract or supply. So we just needed to remove the cap or leave it. We went room by room, connecting everything carefully, with Aspen and Lolita following us around and helping in their own way. We kept working on it the next day because it ended up being a several day job to lay all the ducts. We were actually starting to run short on material, so we tried to save as much as possible. Before cutting a duct, we will connect it first to the distribution box and then pull it through the other side, leaving just enough tolerance to be able to secure it neatly later, without wasting material. Even with all that planning, we eventually ran out of ducts and had to order a 5th roll. And of course, this specific size, the 90mm, isn't something that anyone keeps in stock, so it had to come directly from the factory, which delayed everything by a full week. It's one of those moments where you realize that sometimes the smallest part of a build, just a few extra meters of duct, can stop an entire process completely. But that's part of building off-grid and doing everything all by yourself. You get creative, you learn patience, and you make sure that next time you order a little bit more than you think you will need, but then you regret it later because you spent extra money. So in your next order, you come up short again, and it's just a cycle that repeats over and over in my life. And going back to sustainability, even though I don't like to get into it a lot, but when you look at a system like this, it might just seem like a network of ducts and a box that moves the air. But it is actually one of the key components that makes this house truly sustainable. Most homes, even new ones, waste an enormous amount of energy just by how they handle air. In a typical house, the air that you have already heated in the winter or cool in the summer just gets thrown out when you ventilate. And then you have to spend more energy heating the new air coming in. It's like having a window permanently open while the AC or the heater is running. What this system does is close that loop. The air that leaves the house passes through a heat exchanger inside the machine, where it transfers its temperature to the fresh air coming in. So in winter, the warm air leaving the house preheats the cold air coming in. That means that the house uses far less energy to stay comfortable all year round. But sustainability isn't just about saving energy. It is also about health, comfort, and how the house interacts with the environment around it. A sealed, super insulated home like this one can easily trap humidity, CO2, and smells, and that's where this system makes a massive difference. It constantly replaces stale air with clean, filtered air from outside, so the air inside always feels fresh even with all the windows closed. And also in the final setup, the exhaust duct will include a humidity sensor. When that sensor detects a rise in humidity, for example when you are taking a shower or cooking, it actually will increase the airflow, pulling out the moist air faster and preventing condensation or mold from building up. It's the kind of automation that quietly works in the background, keeping the house healthy without even you noticing. For me, that's what makes this system special. If it's not loud or flashy or visible, but it is what makes the difference between a house that is simply energy efficient and a house that's truly sustainable. Even though I know all of this will eventually be hidden, I spend days securing every single duct neatly and tightly to the structure. I do everything with the same mindset. I like things to be aesthetically pleasing, organized and with a clear structure, even if no one will ever see it again. In just a couple of episodes, all this will disappear behind the finished ceilings and walls, but I will know it's there, perfectly aligned and in order. The last step of this part of the build was installing the chimney caps, 4 in total, 3 for the fireplaces and 1 for the ERV. This is what allows the system to expel the stale air out through the roof, while keeping the rain from coming in. Since we already know the amount of animals that we live surrounded by, Eugenia installed a fine mesh around each cap to protect them from birds, insects, and anything else that might try to make a home inside. It's one of those details that seems small but makes a huge difference over time, especially out here. We installed all 4 chimneys on the same day, starting early in the morning to avoid the wind. It's always a bit of a challenge working up on the roof, but it felt great to finally see the system connected from end to end. It took us weeks of planning, designing and adapting, but this is the moment it becomes real. The house can finally breathe on its own. And now unfortunately I come with bad news. I have reserved this part to the end of the video because only you that get to the end deserve to know this. The rest of the people that just quit the video are not part of our family, so they don't need to know. These are the very last images that we have of Aspen with us. It breaks my heart to say this, but Aspen went missing 2 months ago after filming this. This video was especially hard for me to edit, seeing him with us still. And I'm trying my best to not cry while saying all this, but we always kept him at sight because we knew that he was an escapist at heart and loved to get away and go for a swim to the lakes next to us. That day we were speaking in the cabin for 3 minutes and he silently got out and found a way to jump over the fence and run away free without us noticing. He had already done it in the past a few times, but has always came back. Unfortunately, this time we were not that lucky and our lovely boy is no longer with us. We searched for him for days, ran kilometers in the trails that are around us without luck. Then we went on a mountain bike to get even farther than my lungs will allow me to go running, and drove around the roads in our car until sunset, and even flew our drone every day, twice a day for weeks. But we could not find any signs of him. We feel you guys should know what has happened, as Aspen was a big part of the channel, and we are not the kind of people that will use a loss of a very loved part of our family as clickbait to gain views like I constantly see in YouTube. So that's why I'm putting it here at the back, because even if I care about this channel, I care much more about him than the views. With that said, I am especially not interested in hearing nobody's criticism, because haters are always in the hand, especially if you open yourself and share this kind of news. We loved Aspen very much, and it has been very, very hard for us to continue working, thinking that he will not be joining us in this house, in which he loved spending time at so much. Maybe a miracle happens and he comes back after months of living wild and free, which, if I'm being honest, was his true nature since he was a puppy. A true wolf tamed by humans, but that deep down was still a free spirit that No puedo decir to you. A true wolf tamed by humans, but that deep down was still a free spirit, that all he wanted was to run free and hunt. I am always imagining his return, and wherever he is, he will always be part of our family. Love you, buddy.